What happens when a man is admired for his body, feared for his strength, and denied his humanity? And what does it say about a system that profits from greatness, but refuses to fully recognize it? Woody Strode's life wasn't defined by one enemy, one villain, or one dramatic showdown. There was no single moment where he could point and say, that's where the battle was won or lost. His real war was slower, colder, and far more exhausting. It was a lifelong confrontation with power, political power, cultural power, and Hollywood power, that constantly tried to use him without ever truly seeing him. He lived in a world that admired his strength but feared his humanity. A body stolen by ideology. In 1936, Adolf Hitler turned the Berlin Olympics into a global stage for propaganda. The event wasn't about sport. It was about spectacle. Hitler wanted the world to see what he claimed was the physical and moral superiority of the Aryan race. Yet history has a cruel sense of irony. When Nazi artists, sculptors, and photographers searched for the perfect physical specimen, ideal proportions, muscle balance, power, symmetry, they didn't find it in Germany. They found it in America. They found it in a young athlete named Woody Strode. At UCLA, Strode was extraordinary. Not just good, rare. He excelled in football, track and field, and strength events. His body wasn't built in a gym for display. It was forged through discipline, labor, and instinct. Nazi observers photographed him. They sketched him. They studied him. His physique became reference material for propaganda art meant to glorify Aryan dominance. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. How does a racist ideology reconcile admiring the body of a man it would ultimately erase? Strode, of African and Native American, Creek and Cherokee descent, represented everything Nazi doctrine rejected. Hitler admired the shell but would have despised the soul inside it. That contradiction followed Strode like a shadow for the rest of his life. When World War II broke out, Strode didn't write manifestos or give speeches. He responded with action. He joined the U.S. Marine Corps Air Wing. The same body once sketched for tyranny was now carried into battle against it. That alone is a quiet kind of heroism history rarely celebrates. Hollywood's polite chains. After the war, Hollywood beckoned. Another empire. Another system with rules that were never written down but always enforced. Directors loved Woody Strode's presence. Cecil B. DeMille, legendary, commanding, cast him in multiple films. In The Ten Commandments, 1956, Strode appeared as the King of Ethiopia. Regal. Powerful. Physically unforgettable. But listen closely. He barely spoke. Hollywood paid him well. In fact, he became one of the highest-paid black actors of his era. From the outside, it looked like success. But money came with conditions. His body was celebrated. His silence was required. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. What is success worth if you're never allowed to fully exist? Strode recognized the pattern instantly. In Nazi Germany, his body symbolized ideology. In Hollywood, it symbolized profit. In neither place was his inner life. The doubts, the intelligence, the emotional complexity allowed center stage. They didn't want Woody Strode the man. They wanted Woody Strode the monument. Strength that made stars uncomfortable. By the mid-1960s, Burt Lancaster was the embodiment of American masculinity, charismatic, athletic, confident. Then came The Professionals, 1966. On set, something subtle but undeniable occurred. No shouting. No insults. Just presence. Lancaster trained constantly. He worked hard for every ounce of physical credibility. Strode didn't train for the camera. He was the camera's truth. Every challenge Lancaster pushed forward, running, lifting, endurance, Strode met without effort. Observers noticed immediately. This wasn't ego. It wasn't competition. It was simply reality. One man had crafted an image. The other had lived a life. And something fragile cracked. What happens when a man who built his identity on dominance meets someone who doesn't need to prove it? Strode said nothing. He didn't posture. He didn't gloat. His silence spoke louder than confrontation ever could. The safe black man versus the real one. As the civil rights movement gained momentum, Hollywood faced a dilemma. America was changing. Audiences were changing. But fear still ruled the boardrooms. They chose safety. Sidney Poitier became the symbol, brilliant, dignified, controlled. A black man white audiences could admire without feeling threatened. Woody Strode was something else entirely. He was large, physically imposing, quiet in a way that suggested depth, not submission. Hollywood didn't know how to package him without dulling his edge. So they didn't try. Instead, they sidelined him. He wasn't punished. He was simply avoided. And yet, Strode never shrank himself to fit their fear. The man who refused to bend. Later in life, Strode found something Hollywood never gave him, respect on his own terms. In European cinema, especially Italian westerns, he was allowed to be complex, dangerous, noble, flawed, human. Directors let him speak. Audiences listened. He carried himself the same way he always had, with dignity, restraint, and an unshakable sense of self. He didn't beg for acceptance. He didn't apologize for his presence. His life teaches us something uncomfortable but essential. Systems will celebrate your strengths, as long as they can control them. The moment you demand full humanity, resistance appears. Woody Strode understood this truth long before the world was ready to admit it. He never won the war against power. But he never surrendered either. And sometimes, simply refusing to disappear is the most powerful victory of all. Born into poverty, forged by discipline, and shaped by physical excellence, Woody Strode had everything Hollywood claimed to admire. He was an Olympic-level athlete, a decorated soldier, and a commanding physical presence. On screen, he radiated strength and integrity. Off-screen, he carried quiet intelligence and self-respect. Yet none of that made him safe. In 1960, Sergeant Rutledge gave Strode something rare, a leading role with dignity, complexity, and moral depth. He played a black cavalry sergeant falsely accused of rape, a role that demanded restraint, courage, and emotional intelligence. Critics praised the performance. Audiences noticed. For a brief moment, it felt like a door had opened. Then Hollywood stepped back. No follow-up roles. No momentum. No second chance to lead. Why allow a breakthrough, only to shut the door immediately after? Because the system had seen enough. It wasn't personal. It was strategic. Hollywood wanted progress without disruption. It wanted symbols, not equals. It wanted black excellence that reassured, not black humanity that demanded space. Woody Strode had crossed an invisible line. Heroes saved, but never remembered. In The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, there's a moment that perfectly captures the contradiction of his career. Strode's character carries John Wayne's wounded body from a burning building. The black man saves the white hero. It is an image of strength, loyalty, and sacrifice. Yet the story, and history, still belongs to Wayne. Strode was essential, but never centered. Necessary, but never remembered. This wasn't about animosity between actors. Many respected him. Some admired him deeply. But the narrative was never allowed to shift. Hollywood permitted black characters to sacrifice, but never to define victory. They could bleed. They could die. They could save the hero. But they could not be the hero. Leaving to be free. By the late 1960s, Woody Strode made a decision that changed everything. He left America. Not in bitterness. Not in defeat. But in clarity. In Europe, especially Italy, he found something Hollywood had never offered him: freedom. In films like Black Jesus, 1968, Strode was finally allowed contradiction. He spoke. He questioned. He doubted. He thought. He led. He wasn't a symbol of strength. He was a man. In America, Strode once said, "I'm a black actor. In Europe, I'm just an actor." That sentence alone is an indictment. It reveals how narrow the cage was, and how normal it had been made to seem. The enemy with no face. So who did Woody Strode truly battle? Not Hitler. Not DeMille. Not Lancaster, Poitier, or John Wayne. His enemy was a machine, polished, profitable, and deeply afraid of black power that could not be managed or softened. Hollywood never banned him. It did something far more effective. It limited him. And perhaps the greatest injustice isn't what happened to Woody Strode, but how close history has come to forgetting him entirely. Because remembrance is power. So the question remains. When a system refuses to fully see a man, does his silence mean defeat or dignity? Woody Strode answered that question not with speeches or outrage, but with his life. He refused to shrink. He refused to beg. And he refused to disappear. And sometimes, that is enough to inspire generations who come after. Quietly watching. Finally understanding.